Hi guys, I'm Marc from MTM, and today in the workshop we have a 2013 Vauxhall Insignia that has failed its MOT. So the reason it's failed was the condition of the driver's seatbelt. The webbing is damaged, and because of that it has to be replaced. So if we were to have a look at the actual condition of the belt, if we pull this out, we can see there's damage along the side of the webbing and it's just frayed off. And as per the MOT rules, any damage to this webbing will compromise the structural integrity of the actual belt itself, and that's the last thing that you want. So that's why this has to be replaced. So these seat belts are linked to the airbag system. They have a little pretensioner in them which ignites when the airbags get set off in order to pull the seatbelt tighter to hold you, the driver, into your seat securely. So because it's linked to the airbag system, it's always safer to disconnect the battery, leave it a considerable amount of time, say 20-30 minutes, just to make sure that the system decharges and that it's safe to work on. Last thing you want to do is unplug something and accidentally ignite an airbag. So to do this, all we need to do is disconnect the negative terminal on the battery and just set it to one side. So it's just a 10mm. Just tuck it out the way just so it doesn't accidentally come back up and reattach itself to the battery. Because last thing you want to do is work on a live system. So when you're happy that you've left everything long enough to decharge the system and you want to start working to replace the seatbelt, you'll notice that it's held on in two separate places. One is at the actual base of the seat, then it goes up through this little guide and it'll go down the inside of this plastic panel to the reel that's at the bottom. So we have to remove these plastic trims. So we need to first of all peel back the actual door seal just to give us proper access, and these can be quite tight. But be careful, you don't want to damage them, because again, if they go back and there's a little tear in them, then they won't seal properly and you'll get a water leak. You don't have to take them completely off. You only have to take it off just so you have access to these panels so they can come off and pop back on easily enough. So you want to do this for the driver's door and the rear door. So we've just pulled it back just so it's not in the way of the panel, and I have pulled the seal back a little bit further just so that this panel does tuck a little bit underneath this one, and if we need to unpop this bottom panel just in order to get this out a little bit easier, you don't want that seal in the way. And it's the same for the back. We've just pulled it off just far enough and we just guided it out the way so we have room to work. So in the driver's footwell we want to pop up this plastic panel, so we can pop this up by hand. And you want to make sure it's completely disconnected. There's little clips there and they can be quite tight. Just to make sure this is free, pop this out. With this loose, you can work out this feed panel. Once the center panel is completely loose, you have to pull it downwards in order to release these top clips. They can be really awkward. And back up so you can work this out. These are those top clips, they go up quite high, so it can be awkward. It might be easier if you disconnect this top panel from the bottom, but it's quite awkward to get your hands in there to squeeze these clips, and they can be quite brittle so they'll break. But yeah, so now this is out, we've got plenty of room to see what we're doing. You can see it comes up here, runs down to the actual reel that's at the bottom, and you can see here this little yellow tab, that is the electrical connector for the pretensioner. So you want to be really careful disconnecting that. But to disconnect it, we need to prise up this little security tab, this orange tab. And you should be able to prise that up with your fingers. And we'll just disconnect it and set the wiring to one side. So this top part of the reel is a Torx 50. These can be quite tight. And just below it, you'll see there's another part of this reel. It looks like it's just a clip. That just pops out. And feed it out. Then it just leaves the bottom part of the reel itself. So if you're looking down at the actual reel, you'll see the bolt holding it in is just there. That's another Torx 50. And because you don't have a lot of space here, it makes sense to roll the front seat forward as far as it'll go. just so you can get your ratchet in. And once it's loose, you can finish working it out by hand. There's that bolt out. And now the reel is free. So then with this out, feed this through that centre panel. And now all we have to do is disconnect it from this side. So just at the base of the seatbelt, there's a little plastic tab that comes off there, and there's a 10mm. Once that is out, you just want to prise apart the plastic. There you go. And that comes straight out. Feed it through the guide. And that is the old one completely removed. So let's go get the new part. So here I've got the new seat belt. You'll notice I've got mole grips on here. It's only on very lightly just to stop it retracting in, because it's very important with a new seat belt that it doesn't retract all the way in and go past the safety, because then it's very difficult to get it to retract back out again. So that's there just in case, because I've got everything loose now ready to fit back to the car. But again, if you're going to be using a mole grips to hold the seatbelt out, very, very gentle, because you don't want to damage the webbing because you're back in the same place. So yeah, let's get this fitted. So with your new belt, you want to work out which way it's going to be running. So if that is there, because this will only go on one way because of the shape that's on the end of the tab. So that will slot into there. That will run up there, that way. Just so you know, because you have to run it through the main and this panel first. And refit this. So you get your 10mm ready and the piece of plastic that holds it in place. Make sure it sits completely flush. Should click together nicely, and then place your 10mm through. When you're happy that that's tight, you want to put that little plastic cover back on so you don't see the 10mm bolt. So now that's back on, what I'm going to do is just start this by hand up here, and then feed this back into position down there. So I'm not tightening it yet, I'm just putting it on by hand, just so I can see how everything runs nicely. I'll put this around the back so I can fit it from the back of the car. So now that I know that the seatbelt is run up, it's not going to fall back down past that safety I mentioned earlier, I can take off the mole grips and I can set the seatbelt back into where it needs to live. So on the reel, you'll see that tab that needs to be fed in to a little slot that's on the body of the car, just there, and the hole just below it is where that Torx 50 goes. This one here. So we'll start that off by hand, and then you can finish it off with a ratchet. Once you're happy the reel is tight, this secondary runner needs to be tucked in and placed in like that. Then we can make sure that this Torx 50 up here is done up nice and tight. Once we're happy everything else is tight, before we start to put any panels back on, we need to make sure that this pre-tensioner wiring is reconnected to the seatbelt. So just gently place it in, and then push in that orange tab. And that's done. So now that we are going to reattach this centre panel, you can see how it's meant to fit. So you've got to move upwards to put these top two clips in, and then these clips just push directly in to the body of the car, and then we'll have to reattach it underneath the bottom. So you want to be very careful how you do it, because you're going to have to maneuver it around the bottom trim here, because it isn't completely off. So let's pull the seatbelt out to give us some room and start to feed this back up. Actually, let's move this out of the way first, get these top clips in. Once they are fed in, put that back in. So with this adjuster, there is a little groove there that this outer part sits in, and another groove there that it sits in on the inside. So you want to make sure that those are securely in place. Once you've made sure that this is in those guides, it'll slide up and down nice and smoothly. And you want to make sure it's in line with the mechanism behind it, so that when it does pop into place, you know everything's going to be right. So we're just double checking the clips at the top. That needs to be pushed up. And then make sure that all of the clips line up with the holes on the actual panel. But once you're happy that that is in, and everything's in place for exactly where it should be, you can finish popping it on. Once you're happy that the center panel is all clicked in as it should be, you can make sure that everything is in place on this lower panel, and it'll just click back into place nicely. Again, same for the back, because this is one continuous panel. And just pop in the clips at the base. There you go. You can refit the door seals. It's very important that these seals are all the way home. So some places might just need a little light tap to make sure that they are. Or if you want, you can grab a really soft rubber mallet just to help tap them into place. Once everything's back together, I'm going to give it the test, make sure that it locks into the buckle, and give it a tug, make sure that it locks and everything works exactly as it should be. Now that we're happy with that, we can reconnect the battery. And let's start it up. So what we're looking for is just to make sure that, one, you haven't got an airbag warning light coming on the dash. Because we've changed over that electrical connector to the pre-tensioner, we want to make sure that there's no issues there. And also we want to make sure that the car recognises that you put on the seatbelt. And that's job done. And that is how we go about replacing the driver's side front seatbelt on a 2013 Vauxhall Insignia. Guys, if you've liked this video, if this has helped you, please give us a like on the video and drop us a comment if you have any questions. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. For those of you already subscribed, you'll notice that there's a little join button that can set you up to one of our membership programs to give you access to some exclusive perks. Maybe I'll start posting some of my outtakes on there, I don't know yet. But yeah, that's it for this week's video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.